Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and today I'm doing something that I've really only done a handful of times, and that is NBA Overreactions. And today's topic is focusing specifically on something that I've kind of seen thrown around on Twitter or just online in general over the past couple of weeks, and that is the possibility or even the necessity for the Philadelphia 76ers to trade away Ben Simmons. Now, the reasonings that I've seen for this are, one, primarily the fact that it's not a great team fit in Philadelphia and they have kind of a weird mix of stars and players in general, specifically focused around the fact that none of them are great shooters, none of them meaning Jimmy Butler, Joel Embiid, and Ben Simmons. And Simmons specifically is one of the worst shooters in the league and flat out refuses to shoot from three, which really cramps the offensive spacing. And then the other thing is just the fact that Joel Embiid is the focal point of the team. This is his team, and Philadelphia is really his city. And it's just starting to seem like, with the fact that that is Embiid City and they need to keep Jimmy Butler happy so that he re-signs, Ben Simmons is starting to seem like the odd man out. And as a result, there have been some articles online or just some thoughts on Twitter about the possibility of the Sixers trading away Ben Simmons, either to kind of reload their bench and to create some more role players around both Butler and Embiid, or possibly even in a trade for Anthony Davis to create like a Twin Tower situation in Philadelphia. Now, to be clear, in my opinion, this is an absolutely ridiculous idea. There's no reason for the Philadelphia 76ers to be trying to trade away Ben Simmons right now, and that's why I titled the video the way that I did with the NBA Overreactions part. But I can also kind of see where some people are coming from with the offensive spacing issues. The fact that Simmons not only can't shoot, but refuses to shoot really does cramp their spacing, especially when Joel Embiid is in the post or when Jimmy Butler is trying to isolate. It definitely causes issues, and those issues are going to become even more pronounced in the playoffs. And they did have some spacing role players like Robert Covington and Dario Saric, but both of them were traded away for another star player that has some issues shooting in Jimmy Butler. So yes, on the surface, in a vacuum, if the Philadelphia 76ers decided to trade away Ben Simmons for 2 or 3 or 4 high-quality role players that can guard and can shoot from three, it would probably make their team better initially, but that's not the point, because Ben Simmons is not the issue with this 76ers team. Because it seems like we've all kind of suddenly forgotten that just this time last year, a lot of people were talking about Ben Simmons as one of the up-and-coming bright young stars in the league and a borderline all-star candidate last year as a rookie, and how great he is as a passer, finisher, and something that frustrates me even more than probably the shooting thing does, as a defender, when engaged and when he's giving high quality effort, Ben Simmons can be an all-NBA caliber defender, and that's just not something that he consistently puts forth a ton of effort in. But he is a great young player. And not only that, but the stretch that the Sixers put together at the end of last season that kind of catapulted them towards the top of the Eastern Conference standings was largely without Joel Embiid on the floor and with Ben Simmons leading the way. But instead of focusing on all those things that Ben Simmons does well at such a young age and all the positive things he brings to the floor, we just continue to look at the one thing that he does extremely poorly. And again, I understand why you could be frustrated about that, but in my opinion, the problem here is something that we should be focusing on instead, and that's the lack of roster construction intelligence with this Philadelphia 76ers team and all the mistakes that they've made in that area. There are a number of moves that the team made or didn't make and arguably should have that have made this such a top-heavy team in the Embiid-Simmons era. Things like trading away Jeremy Grant, who's become a great 5-position defender for the Thunder, in exchange for half a season of Ersan Ilyasova, the Markelle Fultz situation, which is unresolved, and you can put blame on whoever you want for that and how that's worked out if you want to, but that was certainly, I don't know if you want to call it a mistake, but it's certainly something that's holding them back to miss on a #1 overall pick that way, missing out on guys like Nerlens Noel and Jahlil Okafor. And not just the fact that they didn't work out as players, but the fact that they really didn't get any kind of value for them in trades later on either. And not to mention all these late first and early second round picks that they've missed on over the last couple of years as well, because as I've talked about in a few videos about the Sixers before, that was a big part of the process, just having a ton of draft picks and being able to get a couple of draft gems to build around some of the more established stars was always supposed to be part of this whole thing, and that just hasn't materialized. But it isn't just the high-profile early first-round picks they missed on either. Part of the whole idea of the process was to get as many picks as possible, even late first and second round picks, to try and pull out a diamond in the rough that would be on a cheap deal for years to come. These kinds of selections are very tough to get great value out of, but the idea was that if they gave themselves enough chances, eventually they would find a guy like Draymond Green or Manu Ginobili or even Malcolm Brogdon. Instead, with the 17 different second-round selections they held the rights to from 2013 to 2017, they ended up with exactly one guy that's become a solid NBA player, Jeremy Grant, who was a part of that same 2014 draft class with Embiid and Saric. But they even managed to screw that up and traded Grant away to the Thunder in 2017 for basically nothing, where he's become a really good versatile player for Oklahoma City. The jury is still out on guys like Landry Shamet, Zaire Smith, even Jonah Bolden is starting to show some life, but really what they've gotten out of the last couple of years from all these draft picks that they've put together are TJ McConnell, Robert Covington, and Dario Saric, and two of those guys they traded away for another star in Jimmy Butler, and you can critique that move yourself if you'd like. And two of those guys weren't even draft picks. They were undrafted player signings, being Covington and McConnell. But that issue, the fact that they don't have a very good roster around their three stars, they can fix that with trades and free agency signings. They still have a good amount of flexibility moving forward to try and make some things happen. But what they can't do is trade away a guy like Ben Simmons that's so young and so talented in some kind of desperation move. So I just don't really see the logic here of saying that he should be moved and the Sixers should trade him. Because even as weird and quirky as this Sixers team is sometimes, and you could put a good amount of the blame on Brett Brown if you'd like, they don't run a ton of pick and rolls. They have one of the stranger offenses in the league, and it probably doesn't play to the strength of some of their better players. This is a core, this is a group that 95% of the league would kill to have between Butler, Simmons, and Embiid, and especially the two younger guys being Embiid and Simmons. So there's no reason to overreact and say that, they should trade away one of their key guys to try and fill out the roster when that is a problem that you can solve through other ways. It's much, much easier to get high-quality role players to play around other guys that can guard and can shoot, especially when you're a team that's good that can potentially get those guys at a discount, than it is to get one of the bright, shining young stars in the league in Ben Simmons on your roster. It's much more difficult to do that. And I just don't think that that's something that we should be pressuring the Sixers to try and move on from. And trust me, I get it. It's extremely frustrating to watch a Sixers game and see just the kind of cramped lack of spacing on offense when Simmons is on the floor, and just the fact that he refuses to shoot in game, because he's had plenty of time in the NBA to work on his jump shot and be a league average shooter, and it just hasn't happened to the point where he just flat out refuses to shoot. And that's frustrating, as you can tell by my tone of voice, but he's so young. Just give him some time to figure it out before you start saying to trade away this guy or that guy just because they have some holes in their game. And so I don't know if the 76ers are going to figure this out. I don't know if this core of Simmons, Embiid, and Butler is going to work. I don't know if they're going to re-sign Butler. I don't know if he's going to want to come back. I don't know if Embiid's going to be able to stay healthy. I don't know if Simmons is ever going to be able to shoot. But what I do know is having a group of these three guys is something that in today's NBA is very, very envious for 95% of the league. And trading away someone like Ben Simmons for even an Anthony Davis type player that you don't know if he's going to re-sign, there's a lot of risk involved there trying to pair him together with Joel Embiid, and that doesn't really solve your spacing issue either. Just relax for a moment. Just pump the brakes, work through what you have, because this time last year, we weren't even sure if the Sixers were any good. They really only started to exceed expectations toward the end of the season, and then we kind of just started putting them in the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference before realizing that halfway through the year, they were still hovering around 500 last year. So this is a very accelerated process that has been accelerated even further by the Jimmy Butler trade, and we should just relax for maybe a year or two and see what they can put around these three guys before we start throwing out all these crazy you should trade him or him or him scenarios. Okay, and with all that said, I realize that this might come across like I'm attacking some people or yelling at you for throwing these ideas out, and trust me, I'm not. That's part of the fun of the NBA, is all these crazy trade scenarios and how things can change so quickly. So I'm not blaming people for having this idea of, hey, maybe we should trade away Ben Simmons. It's not going to work. And personally, I would love to see Ben Simmons on his own team, like potentially in New Orleans, running the show like he did down the stretch for the Sixers last season, because I think he's so much fun to watch in that kind of scenario, in a Giannis type of scenario with all these shooters around him. That would be a lot of fun. So I'm not blaming people for thinking about this, but just pump the brakes on actually pushing the Sixers to make this move and trade away Ben Simmons, because it's way too early for that, in my opinion. But with all that said, that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.